I guess I should start by telling you who I am. My name's Rowena. I'm 30 years old and I work as a freelance programmer. I've got my own house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I've been doing the programming thing for about 8 years now, ever since I graduated from college. My family consists of my parents. Mom's name is now Marilee, and Dad's Dorian, and my younger sister Keslin, who's 24. Mom works part-time at some retail store. Dad does construction when he can find work. And Keslin just graduated college last year. She's been living with my parents ever since, trying to find herself or whatever. We're not super close as a family, but we keep in touch. They live about 40 minutes away from me, so we don't see each other every week or anything. Usually it's just holiday gatherings and the occasional family birthday party. This year was going to be different though. Back in November I had this crazy idea. I called my parents and suggested they all come to my place for Christmas dinner instead of doing our usual thing at Mom and Dad's house. "That sounds wonderful, honey," Mom had said over the phone. "We'd love that." Dad got on the line too. "Yeah, Rowena, that's real nice of you. We'll be there." Even Keslin seemed excited about it. "Oh my God, yes. I'm so tired of Mom's dry turkey anyway," she laughed. So we made it official, December 25th at my house. I told them to come around noon so we could prep everything together and eat around 3. The month leading up to Christmas was crazy busy for me. I had 3 big client projects to finish before the holidays. So, I was working 12-hour days pretty much every day in December, but I kept thinking about Christmas dinner and how nice it was going to be. I went all out with the planning. Made a huge grocery list with all the fancy stuff. Prime rib instead of turkey, fresh crab for appetizers, those expensive imported cheeses, real champagne. I even ordered special desserts from this fancy bakery downtown. The whole thing cost me almost $1,050. 3 days before Christmas, I went shopping for a new tablecloth and dishes. Found this gorgeous set at the department store. White plates with gold trim, matching glasses, the works. Cost me another $410. I also bought a new dress for the occasion. The week before Christmas, I had to turn down plans with my friends because of the family dinner. Christmas Eve came around and I was running around like crazy, cleaning the house, prepping vegetables, marinating the meat. Everything had to be perfect. I set the table with my new dishes and stepped back to admire it. It looked like something out of a magazine. Around 10 p.m., I decided to send a quick text to the family group chat just to confirm everything was still on track. "Hey guys, so excited for tomorrow. Still planning on noon, right?" I went to bed feeling satisfied. Tomorrow was going to be great. I woke up Christmas morning feeling energetic and happy. Made myself coffee and started getting the prime rib ready. The house smelled amazing already. I put on some Christmas music and started humming along while I worked. Around 11:30 I checked my phone. No response to my text from last night. That was weird. But maybe they were just busy getting ready. Called Mom straight to voicemail. Called Dad voicemail. Called Keslin voicemail. Noon came and went. No one showed up. No calls, no texts, nothing. By 12:30 I was getting seriously worried. What if something happened? What if there was an accident? I called all 3 of them again. Still voicemail. 1 o'clock. Still nothing. The prime rib was ready to go in the oven, but I didn't want to start cooking until I knew what was going on. 2 o'clock. I was pacing around the house now, checking my phone every 5 minutes. By 3 o'clock I had to face the truth. They weren't coming. I was sitting here alone in my fancy dress with enough food for 6 people and no family in sight. That's when I realized I had 2 choices. Sit here and feel sorry for myself or do something about it. I wasn't going to let all this food go to waste. I walked across the street to Mrs. Ellington's house. She was the sweet, lonely old lady who always waved at me. When I explained the situation, her face lit up. Next, I went to the young couple next door, Monroe and Unia. They just moved here from another state and didn't know anyone yet. They were thrilled to be invited. Then I found Liza, the single mom with 2 kids from the next street. By 4:30 my dining room was full. Mrs. Ellington brought homemade cookies. Monroe and Unia showed up with wine. Liza's kids were polite and excited about the fancy food. Everyone was talking and laughing, complimenting the prime rib. We were in the middle of dessert when my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Kesslin had posted something new. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened Facebook and clicked on my sister's profile. There was a new video posted just 20 minutes ago. Press play. The video showed Kesslin in a white sundress on a beautiful beach, palm trees in the background, crystal blue water. She looked tan and relaxed. Then this guy walked into the frame. Her boyfriend of about 2 years, Corbin. He got down on one knee right there on the beach. He pulled out a ring box and opened it. Even through the phone screen I could see the diamonds sparkling. Then the camera panned out and I saw them, my parents. Mom and Dad standing behind Kesslin and Corbin clapping and cheering. Mom was crying too, and Dad had this huge grin on his face. I scrolled down to read Kesslin's caption. Currently in Mexico having the best Christmas of my life. I'm engaged. Corbin surprised me with this amazing proposal, and my parents were here to witness it. Christmas miracle. I stared at the screen for a full minute, not moving. They were in Mexico. While I was sitting here waiting for them to show up to Christmas dinner. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't had an emergency. They'd planned this. My family had ditched me on Christmas to go on vacation and watch my sister get engaged. And they couldn't even be bothered to send me a text. For the first time in my life, I truly understood that my parents and sister didn't consider me part of their family. Not really. After my neighbors left that night, I sat alone in my kitchen staring at my phone. The Facebook video was still open, frozen on that image of my family hugging on the beach. I must have watched it 5 more times trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I couldn't understand why they did this to me. If they had told me in advance that they were going to Mexico, I would have just made different plans. I could have gone on that mountain trip with my friends. Instead, I was sitting here feeling like a complete idiot. I decided to send my mom a text message. I needed answers. Just saw Kesslin's video. Why aren't you guys at my house for Christmas dinner? Why are you in Mexico? I hit send and waited. It was almost 11 p.m., but I knew they were probably still awake celebrating the engagement. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Oh honey, it was all last minute. We didn't even know we were going until a few days ago. Kesslin got these amazing deals on flights and hotels. We didn't want to upset you since you'd been planning for so long. I read that message 3 times. Last minute. A few days ago. That was complete nonsense. You don't book international flights and hotels a few days before Christmas, especially not for 4 people. But then something else hit me. This wasn't the first time my family had done something like this to me. They had a history of making promises they didn't keep. I remembered my college graduation 3 years ago. My parents had promised to come watch me walk across the stage. I was so excited because I was the first person in our family to graduate from a 4-year university. But 2 days before the ceremony, they called and said they couldn't make it. Kesslin needs a new phone urgently, Mom had explained. Her old one completely died, and she has that job interview next week. We need to drive her to the store and help her pick something out. Phone. They missed my college graduation because my sister needed a new phone that apparently couldn't wait 1 more day. Then there was my birthday last year. They promised to take me out to dinner at this nice restaurant I'd been wanting to try. I made reservations, took the evening off from work, bought a new outfit. They canceled 3 hours before we were supposed to meet. Your father's back is acting up, Mom had said. But later I saw Dad's Facebook post from that same evening. He was at some sports bar watching a game with his buddies, looking perfectly fine. And the money thing. Oh God, the money thing. Over the past few years, my parents had borrowed probably close to $19,500 from me. Always with promises to pay it back. Just until Dad's next paycheck comes in, they'd say. We'll pay you back as soon as tax refund season hits. But they never did. Not once. When I brought it up, they'd act like I was being petty or greedy, like I should just be happy to help out family. The pattern was so clear now that I couldn't believe I'd been blind to it for so long. They used me when they needed something, but when it came to important moments in my life, I was always an afterthought. I didn't respond to my mom's text that night. What was the point? She'd just come up with more excuses. The next 2 weeks were completely silent. No calls, no texts, no contact at all from any of them. Not even a Merry Christmas or Happy New Year message. It was like I didn't exist. I knew they were back from Mexico because I could see their Facebook posts. Pictures of them unpacking, complaining about getting back to work, sharing photos from their trip, but not one word to me. So I waited. If they wanted to talk to me, they knew where to find me. On a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after Christmas, I was working at my kitchen table when I heard car doors slamming outside. I looked out the window and saw my parents' beat-up Honda in my driveway. All 3 of them were getting out. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Hey, Rowena," Keslin said cheerfully, like we had just talked yesterday. They walked into my house without being invited, settling into my living room like they owned the place. "What do you want?" I asked. The question hung in the air for a moment. They all looked at me like I'd said something strange. Without further ado, Keslin pulled out a folder from her purse and handed it to me. "These are the estimates for my wedding," she announced. Then she held up her left hand, showing off the engagement ring. "Look at this diamond. It's absolutely gorgeous, isn't it?" "I already watched your video from Mexico on Facebook," I said flatly. "You know, the video from the day you were supposed to be at my house for Christmas dinner." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Rowena, you shouldn't be offended by us. The trip to Mexico was a complete surprise." "That's right," Mom jumped in. "Keslin found these last-minute packages at an incredible price. We only found out about the trip a couple of days before Christmas. We didn't want to upset you because we knew you'd been preparing for the holiday for so long." I wasn't really listening anymore. I was staring down at the papers Keslin had handed me. My eyes scanned the list of wedding expenses and the numbers kept getting bigger and bigger. Venue rental, catering, flowers, photography, dress, decorations. At the bottom of the page was a total that made my stomach drop. $62,000. "So," Keslin said brightly, "I need you to give me $62,000 for the wedding." I looked up from the papers in shock. "What? We know you have that much in your savings account," Mom said matter-of-factly. "You've been saving for several years to buy that country house you're always talking about." I stared at them all, trying to process what I was hearing. They wanted me to give up my entire life savings for her wedding. Money I had worked years to accumulate. Money I planned to use to buy my dream home in the countryside. "No," I said. "I'm not giving you a cent." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents and sister just stared at me like I had said something completely outrageous. Dad was the first to speak. "Rowena, we're one family. We should support and help each other." "Support each other?" I laughed bitterly. "Like you supported me on Christmas when you ditched me for Mexico?" "That's different," Mom said quickly. "This is about Keslin's future. This is her wedding we're talking about." I looked at my sister, who was still admiring her ring. "And what exactly makes you think I should pay for your wedding, Keslin?" "Because you're my sister," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And you have the money." "I have that money because I worked for it. I saved it for my own future." Dad leaned forward in his chair. "You can always save up for a house later. But Keslin's wedding is happening now. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. A house is also a once-in-a-lifetime purchase," I shot back. "And it's my life, not hers." Keslin's face was turning red. "I can't believe you're being so selfish about this." "Selfish?" The word hit me like a slap. "I'm selfish. You guys abandoned me on Christmas, didn't speak to me for 2 weeks, and now you show up demanding $62,000. And I'm the selfish one?" "We already explained about Christmas," Mom said, getting frustrated. "It was last minute. We couldn't help it." "You planned that trip," I said. "You booked flights and hotels and didn't tell me because you knew I'd be upset. You just didn't care enough to include me." Suddenly, Kesslin burst into tears. My wedding is going to be ruined because of you. I don't have any other options. Dad stood up, clearly getting angry. We already told Corbin's family that our eldest daughter would cover the wedding costs. Do you know how embarrassing it's going to be if we have to go back and tell them we can't? That's your problem, I said. Not mine. You shouldn't have made promises you couldn't keep. We can keep them, Mom shouted. You just have to help us. No, I said firmly. I'm not paying for a wedding for people who treat me like an ATM instead of family. That's when the real fight started. Mom began screaming that this was the most important day of Kesslin's life, and I was trying to ruin it out of spite. She said I was just getting revenge for Christmas and that I was being petty and vindictive. You're jealous, Mom yelled. You're jealous that your little sister is getting married and you don't even have a boyfriend. Kesslin was crying harder now, saying her whole wedding was ruined, that she couldn't get married without this money, that I was destroying her happiness. Dad kept going on about family loyalty and how disappointed he was in me. He said I was selfish and ungrateful, that they had raised me better than this. Raised me? I laughed. When you missed my college graduation for a phone, you borrowed thousands from me and never paid it back. You ditched me on Christmas for a vacation. When exactly did you raise me? That's different, Dad said. This is about supporting your sister in her time of need. Her time of need. She's 24 years old. She should figure out how to pay for her own wedding. The shouting match went on for another 20 minutes. They threw every guilt trip imaginable at me. I was being selfish. I was jealous. I was spiteful. I was ungrateful. I was hoarding money out of greed. But I wasn't backing down. You know what? Finally said, standing up. Get out of my house. Rowena, don't be ridiculous, Mom snapped. I'm serious. Get out now. Or I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare, Dad said. Try me, I replied, pulling out my phone. They could see I wasn't bluffing. Slowly, reluctantly, they began gathering their things. Kesslin was still sobbing. I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're supposed to be my sister. I am your sister, I said. But that doesn't make me your personal bank account. They left, slamming the door behind them. I stood in my living room shaking with anger and adrenaline. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Within an hour of them leaving, my phone started ringing. First it was my grandmother. Rowena, sweetheart, your mother called me. You need to help your sister with her wedding. No, Grandma, I don't. But she's so young, honey. She just graduated college. She needs support from her family. She needs to learn to be responsible for her own life, I said. I'm not giving her $62,000. Grandma tried to guilt-trip me for another 10 minutes before I finally hung up. Then my aunt called. Rowena, I think you should postpone buying your house for a few years. Kesslin's wedding is much more important. A wedding only happens once in a lifetime. Ashley laughed. You've been married 3 times, Aunt Melrose. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. And the answer is still no. She got angry and hung up on me. The calls kept coming. Cousins I hadn't talked to in years, family friends, even some of my parents' neighbors. They'd obviously launched a full-scale campaign to pressure me into changing my mind. Every conversation was the same. I was being selfish. Family comes first. Kesslin needed my help. I should postpone my own dreams for her wedding. I told them all the same thing. No. The harassment continued for days. My phone was ringing constantly with relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all demanding I change my mind about the wedding money. The worst part was that they all acted like I owed Kesslin something just because we shared DNA. A week after the big confrontation, Kesslin showed up at my house again. I watched her through the window, standing on my front porch in the cold, ringing the doorbell over and over. Rowena, she yelled. I know you're in there. Open the door. I didn't move from my kitchen table where I was working on a client project. I'm not leaving until you give me the money, she shouted. I'll sit on this porch for a week if I have to. Go ahead, I called back through the closed door. Knock yourself out. She kept banging on the door and ringing the bell for about an hour. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and went about my day like nothing was happening. I made lunch, did some laundry, worked on my laptop. Every now and then, I'd glance out the window and see her still sitting there on my porch steps, looking miserable and cold. Around 6 p.m., she finally gave up and left, but not before screaming one final time. "You're destroying my life, Rowena. I hope you're happy." The constant phone calls were getting ridiculous. I was getting maybe 3 or 4 calls a day from different family members, all saying the same things. Finally, I'd had enough. I started blocking phone numbers. First my parents, then my sister, then all the aunts and uncles and cousins who thought they had a right to tell me what to do with my money. But blocking them wasn't enough. I realized I needed to get away from all of this completely. I called my realtor, Janet, the next morning. "Janet, it's Rowena. I want to sell my house." "Oh, okay. Are you looking to upgrade or downsize?" "Neither. I want to move somewhere completely different. Away from this area. Maybe the suburbs outside the city. Somewhere my family can't just show up whenever they want." Janet was surprised but professional. "All right, we can definitely make that happen. How soon are you looking to move?" "As soon as possible." Within a week, Janet had listed my house and started showing me properties about an hour outside the city. Since I worked as a freelancer, I could live anywhere with good internet. The idea of starting fresh somewhere new was incredibly appealing. The calls from relatives finally stopped after about a month. I guess they realized I wasn't going to change my mind. During that whole time, Keslin kept posting dramatic messages on social media about how her own sister had betrayed her and ruined her wedding dreams. She made herself sound like the victim in all of this. Mom was apparently telling everyone that I was just jealous because Keslin was getting married and I didn't even have a boyfriend. She painted me as bitter and spiteful, someone who couldn't stand to see her little sister happy. But I didn't care what they said about me anymore. I was done trying to please people who only saw me as a source of money. The house sale went through faster than I expected. Janet found me a beautiful place in the suburbs with a big yard and plenty of space. It was actually nicer than my old house and cost about the same. So I still had most of my savings intact. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the move. I just packed up my stuff, hired movers, and left. One day I was living in my old neighborhood, and the next day I was gone. The moving process was actually kind of liberating. I got rid of a lot of old stuff that reminded me of my family. Photos from family gatherings where I always looked uncomfortable, gifts they'd given me over the years that I'd kept out of obligation rather than affection. I donated most of it and started fresh. About a week after I moved, Mrs. Ellington, my old neighbor, called me. She was the sweet old lady who'd come to my Christmas dinner. "Rowena, dear," she said, "I wanted to let you know that your parents and sister have been looking for you. They saw the new tenants moving into your house and came over to ask me if I knew where you'd gone. They seemed quite upset when I told them I didn't have your new address. Thanks for not telling them anything, Mrs. Ellington." "Of course, dear. After what they did to you on Christmas, I wouldn't give them the time of day." That same day, I got an email from my mother. The subject line was, "How could you do this to us?" The email was long and dramatic. She wrote about how cruel I was being, how I'd abandoned my family without even telling them I was moving. She said if I didn't give them the $62,000, they wouldn't invite me to Keslin's wedding. Like that was supposed to be a threat. I deleted the email without responding. 6 months went by in my new house. I was working more than ever, taking on bigger projects, making good money. I was sleeping better, eating better, and generally felt happier than I had in years. It was amazing how much lighter I felt without the constant drama and guilt trips from my family. One day, I was curious about how Keslin's wedding plans were going. I checked her Facebook page for the first time since moving. There were no wedding photos. No posts about wedding planning. Nothing about Corbin at all. Actually, I scrolled down through several months of posts and found my answer. About a month after I moved, Keslin had posted a simple announcement. "Corbin and I had a small ceremony at City Hall today. Thanks to everyone who supported us. The comments were mostly congratulatory, but I could read between the lines. They'd had to scale way back from their original plans. Someone mentioned seeing them having their reception in my parents' backyard. I called my cousin, now renamed Tamsin, the family gossip, to get the real story. "Oh my God, Rowena," she said when she heard my voice. "Where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. What happened with Keslin's wedding?" Yes. Well, it wasn't what she planned. They ended up just going to City Hall and having a little party at your parents' house. Pretty different from that $62,000 extravaganza she wanted. "And how's she doing?" "She's fine, I guess. Still married. But she was pretty bitter about the whole thing for a while. Kept saying her sister ruined her dream wedding. Felt nothing. No guilt. No sadness. No satisfaction. Just was what it was." "Are you ever going to talk to them again?" Tamsin asked. "I don't know," I said. "Honestly, maybe someday. But not anytime soon." And that's where things stand now. It's been over a year since I moved, and I still don't have any contact with my parents or Keslin. I avoid family gatherings where I might run into them. I'm not sure if I'll ever want to rebuild those relationships. Right now, I'm focused on my work and setting up my new life. I've made some friends in my new neighborhood. I'm thinking about getting a dog, maybe taking some art classes. For the first time in my adult life, I'm making decisions based on what I want, not what my family expects from me. And honestly, feels pretty good.